There's been a lot of talk recently about the developing persona of Anthony Joshua. You know, on the way up, Joshua very much sold to the British public as the gentle giant. You know, his catchphrase was "stay humble." It looked like he'd received extensive media training. You know, he was very polished. He was very corporate in terms of his presentation. He quickly attracted big brand sponsorship and big corporate advertisement deals and became the biggest name in British boxing by far. Recently, potential signs are becoming clear that suggest the facade is starting to slip. For my money, a few things have gone against Joshua in recent weeks or months. Whether that's his fault or not is anyone's guess, but they've gone against him. You know, first and foremost, there was the fight with Carlos Takam, which was probably the first time in his career where he'd received criticism. You know, for his performance. People weren't overly enamoured with the performance he put forth in the ring. You then had the Deontay Wilder and Joseph Parker call-outs where both of them, you know, called him out. Deontay Wilder particularly vocal about Anthony Joshua potentially ducking a fight with Deontay Wilder. Joseph Parker and his team calling a press conference where, you know, they showed a video of people who may or may not have dropped Joshua in sparring and, you know, and that type of thing. You then had the incident on Instagram where, you know, either Joshua was hacked, which would be a bad thing, or he was caught sending unpleasant direct messages, which again would be a negative thing. And you just kind of wonder if, you know, some of the corporate nice guy, gentle giant facade that's been built around Joshua is starting to slip. There's been other things as well. You've seen him on Twitter. He tweeted Tyson Fury something fairly aggressive a week or two ago. There was the interview on IFL TV where people thought, you know, maybe he was starting to show some of his true colours and look a bit more tense and look a bit more like a mean guy as opposed to the gentle giant. Anyway, so lots of talk in the boxing community about whether Joshua is doing what we would call in professional wrestling, moving from a face to a heel. You know, is Joshua becoming a heel? Is he becoming a bad guy? Is he going to be marketed as a bad guy going forward? And it's kind of funny how public opinion changes and develops, because a year ago Joshua was number one in the public's eyes and Tyson Fury was the big bad evil guy. Well, recently the press I've seen around Tyson Fury has been rather more charitable. You know, I'm seeing more people talking about how badly wrong Tyson Fury's been by the UCAD situation, and, you know, now people starting to turn against Anthony Joshua. You know, perhaps it's something about the British public that whenever someone's at the top, whenever someone's doing as well as they could be, the public start to turn against them. Maybe it's because as British people we tend to gravitate towards an underdog, and, you know, maybe Fury was number one straight after the Vlad fight, maybe AJ is number one right now, and you're seeing that public start to turn against him. Anyway, interesting article in The Independent today, and I'm going to read you a few quotes from an Anthony Joshua in The Independent where he talks about Tyson Fury, where he talks about Deontay Wilder, and he talks about Joseph Parker. So starting with Joseph Parker, Joshua said, "Does he want publicity? Is it a PR stunt? It's not about worrying about how we fight." Joshua went on to say, "It's very unprofessional of them. The heavyweight championship is such a respected title to have, but stuff like that takes away from the creme de la creme of the title. Boxing is not complicated when working with us. They need to put their egos aside and stop doing silly little things like that press conference." So clearly AJ not enjoying the Joseph Parker call out at the recent press conference. With regards to Wilder, Joshua says, "Parker, I don't disregard him, but I think I'd smack Parker around the ring, no problem. Wilder, I'd knock Wilder out. It would take a bit of time, but I'd definitely knock him out. Parker would take a bit more of a pasting, but I'd get to him. Wilder, I'd knock him out with one shot. Not like I'd go in there and bang, but when I catch Wilder, I'll definitely knock him out." He then went on to talk about Fury, saying, "Fury boxed 12 rounds and ran. I don't respect that. If I'm the king of Dubai in the olden days and a different empire comes to take my territory, you don't come and steal my treasure. That's what Fury done, I think. He stole the boxing from Klitschko in the sense that he just boxed and moved. If an up-and-coming king wants to take the king's treasure, you look him in the face and put a dagger in his chest. You don't stay far from afar and slash. You go to war, and that is what me and Klitschko did. The new king is announced if you really dethrone the old king. You knock him out and took him out of the throne. So Joshua building choice words for all of his opponents. Joseph Parker needs to stop with the publicity stunts. Deontay Wilder would be taken out with a single punch. Tyson Fury just ran from Vladimir Klitschko. Now, whether intentionally or not, Joshua is starting to show various traits of arrogance in his personality. Some will think it's a calculated thing. Some will think that they've decided to take his profile to a whole new level by doing the heel turn, by becoming the bad guy, by becoming the arrogant guy. Could that build more fights? I don't know. But recently he said he'd eat Deontay Wilder because Deontay Wilder's 15 stone 12, which is too small, supposedly, compared to a monster like Anthony Joshua, and that he'd knock Deontay Wilder out with one punch. He then said that Joseph Parker would take a bit of a pasting, but he'd be got out of there, and basically discredited Fury's achievements against Vladimir Klitschko, saying he just ran for the entire 12 rounds. Now, my personal take is that if Joshua's being serious with all of those comments, and I'm not 100% sure he is, but if he is being serious with some of those comments, I actually believe it shows poor understanding of some elements of the sport. And you may say, who are you to sit there on your sofa with the dodgy wallpaper to say that? But if Joshua really thinks he'd eat Wilder simply because he's 2 or 3 stone heavier than Wilder, if he really thinks that what Fury did didn't deserve credit because Fury just danced and ran, if that's Joshua's take, then, perhaps he needs to watch a bit of Floyd Mayweather. Perhaps he needs to watch a bit of Muhammad Ali. There's a lot more to this sport than just being the bigger guy and wiping people out with one punch. There's an element of skill there that Fury showed. There's an element of skill and athleticism that Wilder showed, maybe involving Wilder's lower weight. That has meant that recent performances coming from that side have been so impressive. So I don't know, Joshua, for me, my take on it is that Joshua's been a very privileged guy for many, many years. He was on that British GB Olympic team. He'd have been well looked after. He was clearly going a great route. He was going the route of the Olympics. The pro deals were offered to him for huge money. He started fighting on huge bills relatively early on in his career. He earned a multi-million-pound payday on pay-per-view against Dillian Whyte, even when he was competing at British title level. He's had his promoter pay millions to effectively buy him a world title against Charles Martin. And he's now at a point where he's making 20-odd million a fight. This is a guy whose career trajectory has been up and up and up and up and up. And he's not really faced too many major setbacks. He's been the golden child of the public. He's the fan favourite. He's the face of British boxing. And now, all at once, the cracks are starting to show. Wilder says he's ducking, and people are buying into that, rightly or wrongly. The Instagram thing has been, it's made waves amongst the boxing community. Whether he was hacked or not, regardless, it's made waves. Joshua has had the mick taken out of him, really, by Joseph Parker's camp. And you can kind of feel the comments that he feels slighted and disrespected. Perhaps Joshua's a guy who's just had it all his own way for a very, very, very long time. And because of that, some of the cracks are starting to show in that corporate gentle giant image that was grown up. We saw it. We've seen Joshua before. He's got this image, but I remember an early IFL TV interview where I think Kugan Cassius asked him. Obviously, Dillian Whyte is one up against you at the minute with the win over the amateurs, and you see Joshua saying, "No, I don't see it that way." And he swore into the camera and said, "I'm a beast." You could see it riled him up. He didn't like being questioned. He liked having it his own way. When the interviewer put an objection and pointed out that Dillian Whyte had a win over him in the amateurs, you could see it kind of affected Joshua. And I wonder if there is that sort of you know, a bit to Joshua, where he's been the golden child for so long, and he believes in himself so much that even if anyone raises a question about opponents who could beat him or about his history, you know, it really riles him up and it really gets his back up. I don't know, but for me, interesting stuff today. I suspect this isn't the last we see of Anthony Joshua's heel turn, you know. Comments like he'll take Wilder out with one punch, comments like he'll eat Wilder, because Wilder's 15 stone 12. Comments like Joseph Parker's going to get a bit of a pasting. Comments like Tyson Fury didn't do enough to dethrone the king. You know, all of that sort of stuff. Maybe it builds fights. Or maybe, if you're into the psychology of the game, it suggests that Joshua is having a few headaches and is been pushed into a corner in terms of public image and is starting to get defensive and fire back. Let me know your thoughts, people. Am I reading too much into this? Do you expect this trend to continue? Is it possible that Joshua will go from the king of British boxing to you know, a figure of some sort of controversy within the sport? Let me know your thoughts. Leave your comments in the section below. If you enjoyed the content, please hit subscribe. Please hit the thumbs up. Let me know if you like the video.